So, hello, my cyborg zombies. I'm CJ. I'm the perpetrator of the Connor Wars, which is basically season 3 of Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles. One of the reasons I changed the title was I thought it was more fitting for the series if the title actually fit what was going on, and also because, as everybody has complained since the beginning, Sarah Connor Chronicles is a pain to have to say. So I changed the title. You may be surprised that this is a video blog, and the main reason for that is that I haven't played with my toy here, and I wanted to. So that's pretty much it. I want to kind of address some of the stuff that you have been asking me in email, maybe some of the things that you've commented about. Right now, we've already completed episode 6. Episode 7 is about to be released. In fact, if we look back here, it's being written as we speak. Don't even try to read anything on the screen. I can barely see it. So, episode 7, like I said, is going to be released in a few days. But one of the main questions I have been getting off and on throughout this entire project is, why the heck am I doing it? What am I getting out of it? The truth of the matter is that at the end of season 2, the last few episodes were actually rather good, because overall we were starting to get story, we were getting plot, we were getting Cameron, and we were getting answers. And then when John teleported is wrong, chronoported with Weaver to 2027, presumably, that changed everything. I mean, immediately, once that happened, and he saw Kyle, and especially once he saw Allison, boom, the entire third season popped into my head. And I wanted to see it. Not just the kind of broad strokes that popped in, with all the things that were going to go on, the battles, the kind of personal intrigue, but also all the detail stuff, the nuances of story that you really don't get unless you actually write the story. So I kind of figured, I haven't written a full screenplay, in over 10 years. Sure, I've written little scenes here and there throughout season 2 of things that were popping into my head, things that I'd like to see. Even if they weren't quite how I thought things should go, I thought it'd be fun. And thank you for your comments on some of those too, by the way. So I thought, let's make a project out of this. I can write screenplays. If I have nothing else to do, I can write an hour-long teleplay pretty easily in about 5 days. If I have to, I can write one in a day or two. Thank goodness I don't ever have to. Let me tell you, that's a job of work, trying to write a full teleplay in a day or two. But I figured that, since I was going to have a life, I could come out with a script probably every 10 to 14 days, give or take. And with that, and it's a reasonable pace, I can keep that up. I could write a full third season. So why am I doing this? Well, it certainly isn't to get any money. I am not getting substantially more hits now than I was at the end of season 2 with the podcasts and everything else. So this isn't increasing any of my ad clicks or anything, which aren't really all that high anyway. Which, by the way, click on the ads, will you? Even if you don't buy anything, the clicks help. Thanks. They pay for the site, and they aren't quite paying for the site, so it's out of my pocket. But also, one of the main reasons for doing this is I'm a Summer Glau fan, and by extension, I'm a Cameron fan. And like many of you, I thought she was very ill-used in the second season. Despite her lack of screen time, I thought Summer did an outstanding job by attracting attention even while she was doing very little but standing there. And I kind of wanted to set that right. I wanted the story to be set back to the story that the muses wanted to have told. Some of you who've, my writer friends especially, but some of you who've been reading my blog and the things I write about writing, know that I'm a firm believer in that writers have to take the story where the story wants to go. I mean, you can plot out things, you can put signposts up where you want to go, which I do. That way you don't get lost. But along the way of the journey, you have to be flexible. After a while, the characters tell you what they want, even if it's not what you want. Just as often, maybe more often, the story will tell you that what you had thought was the story isn't the story at all. You have to go a different way. And in the second season, my feeling is that we, the fans, and who knows how this happened, even the studio, knew that the story was largely about this dance that John and Cameron were doing. Now, mind you, I'm not a fanboy. I try to avoid the term jammerin because that wasn't what interested me. What interested me was John and Cameron. I really didn't care about any relationship thing per se. So I thought, okay, this is a challenge. The muses inspired me at the end of the second season. They flashed this whole third season in my head. So I thought, okay, we have Allison. We have a damaged Cameron. We have Weaver wanting to be John's ally, apparently. So let's run with that. And based on the nice things that you have said, I think I've been doing okay so far. I will say that, as I mentioned before, you go with the story and the characters take you. I've been surprised as I've gone along. And I'm sure you're wondering what has surprised me. Honestly, Brandy, as the character that she is, did not exist. Brandy is actually an amalgam of 4 different characters that I had planned to write. You know, one was a Gray, one was a Skynet test subject, and all of this, but I was already suffering from a total glut of characters. Even using my wiki to keep track of everything. And yes, I have an entire Wikipedia sort of thing that deals just with this project. It's insane. I decided I can take these 4 characters and put them into one. And it's become a very intriguing character, I have to say. Another character that was amorphous when I started. I knew I needed this type of character, but I didn't have the specifics until I wrote the episode, was Mikola. Mikola was a little suaver than I was expecting. And as I've described on my blog, that the characters kind of evolved into parallels. Mikola is kind of like the evil Ellison. Brandy is kind of like the evil Allison. But they aren't just that. They have many more depths. And addressing some things that you've written about is, yes, I do really work out the characters that much. You kind of have to. when I first started writing, I was a plot is way more important than character thing sort of writer. But as I wrote a lot more screenplays and short stories and novels and everything else, I came to realize that it was the characters that were important. That how the characters react to whatever situation the writer throws them into was what was interesting. And what I learned, and this is a good writing tip for all you beginning writers, is that you need to develop each of your characters separately. Give them their own histories, totally not worrying about what the plot is or how they're going to fit into the plot. That is totally irrelevant. Some characters, yeah, they have specific places that you have to create. If your basic plot is about someone running for president, you have to make a politician type. But for a lot of characters, what's really interesting is giving them their own history and then throwing them into this bizarre situation and seeing how they react to the other characters that aren't like them at all because you didn't develop them with the plot in mind. And as a result, you get characters like Mikola and Brandy and, of course, what appears to be one of the fan favorites, and I have to confess my favorite since season 1, Alejandra, the Chola. She made quite an impression on me in the first season. I was really, really disappointed when it wasn't followed through. As you kind of see in the season 3, you're seeing some of the things that I wished had happened as the story developed. I thought that one of the smartest things for the Connor cadre to do back in 2008 was to enlist this insider into the LA gang scene. The gangs are tied into a lot of things, and it could have been a very valuable resource and sometimes a very dangerous resource. And that was just totally missed in the quest of the 3 dots. The whole 3 dots thing, ugh. I think I've mentioned it in one of these scripts about the 3 dots. If I have, I'm going to have to go through them again. By the way, in case you're wondering, yes, I do have copies of the scripts and I reference them all the time. I don't have everything memorized. I know where everything is, I just don't know how I do it sometimes. Even in the wiki. Sometimes you need the context. Excuse me. I live in a desert and it gets dry, and when you talk a lot, you need a drink. Okay, so the 3 dots thing is one of these I think needs to be addressed a little bit because we never got an answer. In the final episode, the final 2 episodes, we saw these 3 LEDs on the Turk disk array. But the fact of the matter is those 3 were not there through most of the series whenever we saw the disk array. They got tacked on later. So that, I don't view that as an explanation. I still kind of think that the 3 dots may be just him leaning on the wall when he wrote on the wall in his blood. Which, by the way, I'm still kind of confused about. I wish Josh could explain that to the fans about, think about all of this blood that you're bleeding out. You're weak. So you're going to take all of this time to write all of this stuff on a wall and then fall through the French doors into Sarah's house. Wouldn't it have been a lot faster just to fall through the French doors and in a minute or 2 tell Sarah all of this stuff? I guess not. So, the 3 dots, yeah. If I haven't already explained it in a sideways sort of way, and I think I did, but maybe not, it will be touched on in some future episode, as long as I remember. Okay, when I started this whole project, I have to tell you, the stuff that's happening in the past, I was having a hard time figuring out how I was going to put it in. I didn't want to resort to a lot of flashbacks uh, because in a kind of a real world scenario, it would be tough to keep actors like Lena and Richard and Josh. It would have been hard to have kept them on the payroll just for these guest star appearances when I needed them. But I couldn't think of how to tell the story. How was I going to do it? So I had set my mind that I wasn't going to write the past story at all. I was going to let it take care of itself, and I was only going to write about the future. But I didn't want to do that either, because this story is also Sarah's story. I mean, I might not have liked how Sarah's story was unfolding, especially her craziness, but I didn't want to dismiss it because Sarah's story informs John's story. So that's why I finally came up with the idea that I was going to tell John's story as an episodic serial. For the most part, his stories from episode to episode will stand on their own with the threads of story that run through it. Occasionally I'll do arcs, occasionally I'll do cliffhangers. But for the most part, it'll run through. Sarah's story, on the other hand, is totally nonlinear, as you all have noticed. I have gone from not long after John has disappeared into the future to 2012 when Sarah Connor dies. Okay, speaking of surprises, that was one of them. Not that she was going to die. I already had that plotted out. I just didn't know when I was going to tell it. Because truth be told, since the past stories kind of inform the future stories, what I write in the future stories kind of dictates what I'm going to write in the past story. Not in this episode, however. This one is mostly the past. Go figure. So at that point, I had one of those flashes that said, this is the episode where Sarah has to die. You need to show it. You need to get it out of the way. Partly is because of you guys. I was getting some emails speculating about what was going to happen with Sarah. Some of you were thinking that Sarah was La Cazadora. And I kind of wanted to nip that in the bud. As I explained before in the blog, I wanted you to know that Sarah's a tragic figure. Her fate is sealed. Since we're following the past based upon where John is in the future, her fate is set. She can't change it, because if she changed it, it would change whatever future John was in, and I wasn't going to play that game. So, partly inspiration and partly because of your speculations, Sarah's death got written in. All right, like I said, the past stuff wasn't originally going to be in these episodes, but once I figured out that I didn't have to tell a linear story with them, that I could tell them as not necessarily flashbacks, but episodes in their own. These are the events that are happening in the past, and I don't have to be beholden to making sure that it all ties together throughout the run of the series. It only has to tie together in an episode. Like if something takes 3 months to do, I'm only going to show you the things that are relevant to that story that's taking place in the past. I'm going to cut out all of the other ancillary stuff that is probably going to fit better in another story. The downside of writing Sarah's story like that is I have to work pretty hard to try to keep track of what I'm doing in the timelines. And I don't guarantee I'm not going to make a continuity error here or there. So far, I don't think I have. I know when everything has been happening. I have dates. I have. I will tell you, some of the dates that I have that I've had to work out for the timeline are not the dates that you're seeing online. Some of them I've had to adapt specifically to the series and specifically to this script because they're characters that I'm bringing in. For the most part, they are adhering to the canon, but sometimes you get conflicting information. For example, and this is an important one that I had to make a decision on. In season 1, Sarah, in 2 episodes, said when the events of Terminator 2 had happened. In The Last Voyage of the Jimmy Carter Part 2, when John was explaining everything to Jesse, he said that he was 12 years old when Terminator came back. And since he's 16 now, that didn't jibe with what Sarah had been saying. So I had to pick one. And since Sarah's had been told more often and with more conviction, and since John's memory may have been a little confused, or maybe he was just being a little, maybe he was exaggerating a little bit just for Jesse's sake, I opted for what Sarah had been saying. And it's things like that that I had to work out. Things like the phone code. You know how after Cromartie had figured out the date code that they had been using when they were calling each other, after that they had hello, beep, beep, yeah, and then they'd have an answer and all of that. Well, in order for this to work, even though I haven't employed it yet, except in the first episode, I had to work out what the code would be. Whether you were in danger, whether you were fine, whether something was up, things like that. But something that you could actually learn pretty easily, that you could use on just about any touch-tone phone, or you could even use your voice if you needed to, because it's tonal. It isn't based upon specific numbers. It's a very interesting thing. Maybe I'll post it sometime if it becomes relevant. An interesting little add-on. It's a lot of details like that I've written. Again, here's a little tip for writers. Write a lot of detail into your world. Don't try to show all the detail that you've written into your world in your preparation. That's very important. Don't try to show off how clever you are. I hate it when writers try to be clever. Just tell the story. If what you have worked out fits into the story, put it in. If it doesn't, don't put it in. In the same vein, you'll notice I don't have a lot of technobabble. I don't explain an awful lot of the stuff that's going on. Why? Well, there's a very good reason. It's because, as Gene Roddenberry remarked, when people said, you need to explain how phasers work, he said, look, in a cop show, when the cop pulls his revolver, he doesn't explain to you that's a Smith & Wesson, blah, 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 that, it has this sort of firing mechanism, and that it's good for this sort of deal. Dirty Harry's 44 Magnum little monologue aside. So I like to do that in my own stories. I don't explain a lot of things. You kind of need to get them out of context. If I supply the context enough, you think that you have the explanation. And that's all you really need. And, well, so there's that. I'm amazed none of you have caught me on that I haven't been explaining anything. Well, now you know. I don't explain anything. It's not me being clever. I mean, something does need to be explained. If I have to technobabble things away, I do. And that actually has happened a few times, to be fair. If I really miss something, if I totally don't describe something adequately enough, feel free to call me on it. Keep in mind that a screenplay and a teleplay is considered to be kind of a blueprint. And as such, it is kind of sketchy. It's supposed to be what you see and what you hear, and that's all it is basically supposed to be. Maybe a little directing on the page, like dissolves and fade outs, but not very often. I will say I've been taking liberties because I like the screenplay form a lot, and I think that it's needlessly restrictive. I throw in little comments and asides so that actors know context. I think that's the writer's job. I don't think it's the director's job. And I don't like it when that part of what writers do is usurped in the collaborative process. So I'm taking a few liberties because that's the way I want to do it. And, it's kind of like the fact that at this point I'm ignoring the budget. I mean, I'll cut corners sometimes, but I'm having more characters than you would have in a TV show. I'm having way more special effects than you'd ever have in a TV show, simply because they would never pay for it, which I think is really criminal. I think that if you're going to have a science fiction or fantasy show that's action driven and needs a lot of special effects, I think if you're a network and you're going to buy that, you need to pay for it. I think it is ridiculous that they buy these shows and give them the same sort of budget that you would give to an hour-long drama in a hospital, where the sets never change, where the people just stand around and talk a lot. I think that's just criminal, and I figured since I don't actually have a budget that I have to adhere to, why should I straitjacket the story? Let's tell the story. Let everything else take care of itself. Okay. One question that I do get asked a lot, and I've answered it a few times, is whether anybody from the show has read these scripts. I will tell you that as far as I know, they have not. But a lot of people have signed on, and there are a lot of aliased usernames. So it is entirely possible that somebody has. Would I like it if they did? Honestly, I'm of a mixed view of it. If they like it, yes, I hope they do. But if they feel like I'm doing it badly or not adhering to what they thought the show would be, maybe it's better that they don't. I will honestly say that I think it would be really cool, and this is the geeky fanboy guy in me, if, say, Summer would read it and say, yes, that's what I wanted the character to be. Both Allison and, assuming Cameron comes in later, what Cameron's going to be. Certainly Summer would have gotten a lot more screen time if I had been writing the series. If somebody from the show does read it and you like it, I wouldn't mind a private note saying so. Obviously, you would have to do something that would inform me that it is you. I'm not going to trust it just because somebody attaches an alias. You know the drill. I'm friends with enough people in Hollywood and have been for a long time that I know that you have to be careful. I get fooled sometimes, I do. So, but I am very careful, and when I'm fooled, it's usually when I'm suspicious anyway. Okay, so I do want to thank you all for all the comments and suggestions that you have been sending in. I really enjoy it a lot. It really kind of fuels this whole thing. I really want to do right by you. You are the audience I'm writing for. I'm writing for me because I want to see it. I'm just as much a fan of this as you are. I get a kick out of reading these things too. after they're done. But that said, uh, when I'm writing these things, especially if I'm having a tough passage and I just want to kind of throw in the towel, I do think about you guys. Uh, you are kind of the reward for all of this. I've been enjoying your comments, suggestions, like I've said before, especially concerning Cameron. I have altered the original plan a little bit to try to I don't know how to put the. It's hard to say stuff without giving away spoilers, but I've altered the story a bit so that there'll be more happiness around and sooner. But that's as far as I'm going to go because I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to do it, if I do it. I'm not going to tell you whether Allison survives it or not. I'm not going to tell you what happens with Weaver. Part of the fun of this for me is the fact that I do know how the season ends. Before I wrote word one, I had to have in my mind exactly how the season ended. And this is an important thing, again, for you writers out there. Before you even begin to write, know how it ends. If you don't know where you're going, how you get there is going to be a rough ride. At least know where you're going. Then you can meander all you want, but you'll always know the things that you have to do to get to your destination. So I have in my mind how this season ends, and I will tell you, and this is a spoilery non-spoiler. The season does not resolve whether John defeats Skynet or whether Skynet defeats John. I will tell you honestly, I still don't know who wins. But, and this is the plan. I'm writing this entire third season, excuse me. And then I'll finish the story. I don't know how many pages it'll take to finish the story. It could be 2 episodes. It could be a 2-part miniseries. It could be 6 episodes, whatever it is. Once I decide how it all ends, I'll end it. But it's not going to be this season. The season has its own ending. And that's all I'm shooting for. So, yeah, like I told you, I get surprised. Like I say, right now, I don't know who wins. And that's kind of exciting. And I think it helps the story a little bit because it means that John will have his victories and Skynet will have its victories. And both sides will suffer their losses. As you kind of discovered in the 3-episode arc that I wrote that just finished up in episode 6. That, yeah, the Resistance won, but they lost a lot. Skynet lost, but they can rebuild, probably. But, yeah, this is where I start getting into spoiler territory, and I don't want to give that away too much. I do want to apologize to some of you. I know I've missed some answers along the way. If you wrote to me in the last 2 weeks, I had a kind of busy 2 weeks. And some of them kind of got lost. They're still available. I just have to dig them out. I try to answer everything no later than the day I get it. Usually as soon as I see it, I'll answer it. But between writing this, take care of life stuff, and blah, 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 that you don't want to hear about, uh, yeah, they kind of got buried under what looks like at least 1,000 emails right now. Yes, I get that many emails in just a few weeks. And those are emails that are not connected with this. You guys are kind of, between people who are actually in my life, you guys are my priority. I try to answer yours first. But I got behind, and I swear I'm trying to catch up, and I'm doing the best that I can. All right. A lot of your comments have been very nice about how I've been keeping true to the established characters. And I have to tell you, that's one of the hardest things to do in this project because I didn't develop the characters. They don't have my voice, not the voice I hear in my head when I create characters. So I do have to go back to the episodes and listen to them to get their rhythms back sometimes. Summer is easier because between Firefly and Terminator, I kind of have a lot of her rhythm down. Although I have to be careful to make sure that Allison doesn't sound like Cameron, which isn't always easy. I find Sarah to be one of the harder characters to write for, simply because I always had trouble getting into the Sarah character. I understand her. I can write the character, don't get me wrong. But especially coming from the way she was written in the second season, it's harder to get inside her head. So I'm kind of basing it more on the first season, to be honest. Plus, I'm having her kind of write out her cancer, so far as you know, without any treatment. So that kind of informs a lot of who Sarah is as well, and what she can and cannot do. As for the new characters, I've already touched on that. I was kind of surprised a little bit by how they developed. But Brandy is very much like a lot of characters I create. In the past, when I wrote screenplays, which are usually female-led and they're action-oriented, a lot of the characters were not dissimilar to Brandy. She has a lot of their traits. That said, she's also trying to keep in tone with this series. Again, I'm trying to have this not be a criticism of what was shown on TV. I want it to be an homage. I'm trying to take what the TV gave us and build upon it. Because honestly, had they not done what they did, I couldn't do what I'm doing. And it's not meant to say, ha ha, see what I can do, or anything like that. It truly, truly isn't. It's in service of the story. I want the story to be served. And honestly, it really has nothing to do with me. Because like I say, I'm not getting any money out of it. Not going to get any professional recognition out of it because that's not how this works. Agents and producers and people who actually can give you work, they don't read crap like this. So, I don't mean crap like this in the bad sense, I mean in the stuff sense. I mean, I did my Hollywood thing, so I do know how it works. This is fun. This is fanfic. And this is me doing a fanfic in as professional a way as I can. And let's see, what else? I have my notes over here by the side, so I keep looking to the side a lot. So, yeah, I kind of told you everything that I had in my notes. I'm sure some of you want some spoilers. And let's see if I can come up with something that'll be interesting for you, huh? So those of you who don't want to know any big spoilers, you can tune out now. Stop the video blog. I'll yammer on a little bit just so that you have enough time to hit the right buttons and all of that. I'm not a spoiler phobe. I enjoy spoilers. Uh, I like knowing what's going on, then I like to see how they did it. I don't read the end of mystery novels first. I do like to read a book all the way through. Not that I read a lot of mystery novels. I don't really read a lot of novels. I watch television, as if you can't tell. But I also hate being heavily stressed by not knowing what's going to happen. So I do kind of like to know what's going to happen. In terms of spoilers, whether I write them down or say them here, I like to give you reveals on key events without you knowing it. But beyond that, I'll let you know stuff. Here is a spoiler that some of you have kind of asked me about. You've touched on it a little bit. But I haven't really answered it. Usually the comment I get is that I like the way that you've handled the time travel. So here's the spoiler. Here's the big spoiler. There will be no more time travel. Unless I change my mind. I could. But so far as I'm concerned, there is no time travel. John going into the future altered that future. Skynet does not build its TDE. As a result, John doesn't have a TDE to capture. So there is no more time travel. So the big spoiler with that is John does not go back to the past. He's stuck where he is. Weaver does not go into the future at a rate faster than 1 second per second. So she's stuck where she is. If you want to travel in time, you've got to do it the old-fashioned way. Wait it out. So yeah, that's kind of a big spoiler, isn't it? But actually, I was going to write that in the previous blog. I was wondering whether I should tell you or not. But really, it's one of those non-spoiler spoilers. It doesn't really change the story. Because I've known all along that there was going to be no more time travel, and I've been enjoying the story anyway. Little character thing. Alejandra's full name is Alejandra Paquita Larson Cruz. Her nickname is Alex. But to the people that she will consider to be her family, she goes by the name that Sarah called her the last time they saw each other in time. See, now I'm going to make you dive into the scripts again if you don't remember. And yeah, what else can I tell you? Because I really do know how this season goes. Don't be afraid of giving me suggestions still. Like with I do read your suggestions, and if they fit into the story that's being told, they kind of find their way in, though generally not quite in the way that you suggested them. Like I say, I'm not intentionally trying to be clever. I'm not trying to intentionally go, ooh, look at the surprise that I came up with. But on the other hand, I do try not to be predictable. In that vein, I try to give you answers, as I did with Savannah admitting that she knew that Weaver was a robot all along, or with John kind of confiding into Allison about the someone who she reminded him of, things like that. I'll give you answers. I'm not going to drag this out for the entire season just because I can. I feel that the characters need to be as informed as the audience is. And the audience needs to be actually better informed than the characters are. I think that makes it more fun. If you know more than the characters as a group know, uh, I think it's a lot more fun to watch. That's why I'm not too spoiler phobic, except for certain key things, like some things that I reveal, some of the answers that I tell you. They set up something that's going to pay off later. So I give you an answer, but I give you questions after that. And and that's just how I like to tell a story. I don't want to keep you in the dark. It's not about me as the author. It's about the story. And it's about your enjoyment of the story. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make a story that you're enjoying. As you've seen, if you ask questions, I'll answer them for the most part, unless it's something that I really don't want you to know yet. Like, like with Sarah dying. I didn't want you to know that until I told you. Uh, Weaver, Savannah knowing that Weaver was a robot, I didn't want you to know. But again, I'm not going to string you along. Uh, Things will happen when they're supposed to happen. I still have one episode that's still a little fuzzy about what's going to happen. I think it's episode 14, I think. Not sure about that. I have to check again. But everything else has its plot. Its major plot, significant events that happen in it, what happens with the characters in that part of their timelines. Obviously more in the future than in Sarah's. I know what happens in Sarah's, by the way. I have to in order to write stuff that happens in the future. Before I leave, little things about Alejandra. No, I'm going to leave that for future episodes. I'm going to reveal those soon enough anyway. I'll. No, I can't. I just can't. But I will say that she has been a fun character to write because she was one of my favorite characters to begin with. And I thought, like Cameron, she was ill-used. So I'm trying to have her be used in the best way I know how. And as you can kind of see, and I commented on, was that she's kind of like the human Cameron for when Cameron isn't around. She's John's protector. That's her mission. But why is she doing it? Because she doesn't really know John. I mean, she's met him, but that's about it. So that's something that's going to be explored later. Yeah. Okay, so I think that is probably enough for now. I've been talking for a while. I've had a good part of this bottle of water. And I really need to get back to finishing episode 7. Because I know you want episode 7. It's a little delayed because after that huge battle that I had in my head for a while, I needed the break. And I also had doctor's appointments and car appointments and things like that that I had to take care of that were very time consuming. So we're kind of back on our regular episode schedule, I hope. One every 12 to 14 days, unless something comes up. And I hope you enjoy where this section of the season goes. We're now into the next run to the next climax of the season, which would be like at the end of the 13th episode order if this was a real series. So we're on the run to episode 13. And we'll see how that plays out. I probably won't have a major battle soon, but I can't guarantee that. Because this isn't just about the action, it's also about the characters. The characters have to be characters. So I try to pace everything right. I needed to catch my breath, and I think you do too. So yeah, I'll be blogging my regular blog, or maybe it'll be a video blog, who knows. I'll do that not too long after I post the episode. I usually like to post one, sometimes two in between episodes, just to let you know what's going on. And again, please keep commenting, send me your suggestions, whether it's in the comments, the forum, through the email, whatever. I'm receptive. Um, Please click on the ads. It helps the site stay alive. And yeah, feel free to tweet me if you want. I'm at TerpCJ. The link is on the website. And I guess I'll see you soon. And I apologize if I looked away from the camera a lot. I was kept reading my notes. And so, my cyborg zombies, goodbye until I see you again.